Today we continue with the book of Hebrews, and we're now in chapter 3. The book of Hebrews was written by an anonymous author, perhaps St. Paul or his co-workers, but we don't really know. But what we do know is that the author had a relationship with the disciples who knew Jesus firsthand and was anchored in the teachings of Christ. We know the intended audience had knowledge of the Torah, which of course is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Most likely the audience are Jewish Christians, and that is where the name for this letter comes from. If you continue reading Hebrews, by the time you get to chapter 10, you will discover that the church was facing persecution and imprisonment because of their association with Jesus. Some were abandoning the faith altogether, and this explains the purpose of this letter. The book of Hebrews is divided into 4 sections, where the author compares Jesus with key individuals from Jewish history. Chapters 1 and 2 with the angels and the Torah. Chapters 3 and 4 with Moses and the Promised Land. The first goal is to elevate Jesus as superior to anyone or anything else, showing Jesus is worthy of their love and their trust and devotion. The second goal is to challenge the readers to remain faithful to Jesus despite their persecution. The author retells the story of how the Israelites rebelled against Moses in the wilderness and lost their chance to enter the Promised Land. This is directed at Christians who fail to hold fast to their faith in God during persecution. Israel was saved from Egypt as believers are saved from eternal death through salvation. Israel was offered the Promised Land as believers are promised victory through our spiritual inheritance. Israel lost faith and didn't trust God against the giants of Canaan, as believers can be tempted to lose faith in the face of persecution. The ancient Israelites were not sent back to Egypt, just as God does not revoke the salvation of Christian believers. However, both can expect hardship and a loss of fellowship if they fail to trust in God. Psalm 95 depicts the dangers of a believer hardening their hearts against God, specifically by being fearful or disobedient. Israel did that, just that in the wilderness, and as a result, God disciplined the nation with 40 years of wandering. The reference to the Holy Spirit is not the major point of this passage, but it is important. The writer of Hebrews clearly sees the scriptures of the Old Testament as inspired by the Holy Spirit. These texts are not simply being quoted because they're familiar to the letter's readers. They're being quoted as the very words of God. The term today is meant to imply urgency. This is not a trivial idea being discussed. This is immediate. Today stresses the urging of immediate action. This writer used it 8 times in Hebrews. The verses immediately preceding those quoted in Psalms 95, 6-7, are a call to bow down and worship the Lord. That was the author's desire for his readers. The words he quoted urge avoidance of Israel's sin. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ initiated a new exodus. The author of Hebrews appeals to his recipients not to be discontented because of their suffering, and not to let discontentment give way to open rebellion, lest they, like their forefathers, lose the blessings and the privileges that were now available to them as believers. The part of this chapter that speaks to me most is encourage yourself daily while it is still today, so that none of you may grow hardened by the deceit of sin. I'm sure that Jesus intended the church of believers to encourage one another. Each day at Mass, I am encouraged by each of you. A smile, a touch, a word of encouragement literally lifts me up for the day. And tomorrow, my spiritual cup would be refilled in meeting each of you again at the table of Jesus through receiving the Eucharist. I'm so grateful to all of you.